So here I am in the middle of my totally unrelated to YouTube day job, and requests come through from one of the team leaders to source in a workstation for a new starter that's going to join the company's typical scenario. I need to go and buy a workstation, put it all together, and then send it through to the team leader to go and buy it. So I thought I'll just go through the thought processes that I'm using to buy this workstation and put it together, because it is quite confusing. There's a massive array of options, so someone else who needs to do something similar, who's completely bamboozled by all the options, might take some value from this maybe. So the email that's come through, I'll not read it, I'll not show it, but I'll read it. So, good morning, Neil. So-and-so is currently using the PC, which became free when so-and-so left the company, and we've got a new designer starting soon, so I'm writing a CapEx, which is an internal document to request funds for new hardware and assets. Writing up a new CapEx for a PC to replace his old one. So what I'm going to do is go through the Dell website. Now, people will be like, oh, Dell, man, you don't want to buy Dell. I just prefer Dell. That's just my personal preference. They're not perfect. HP aren't perfect. Lenovo aren't perfect. Each of these vendors have their own problems, but they've also got their own benefits. I just like Dell. I'm used to them. I'm used to their configurator, and it's quite easy to buy what you want. And there's a huge array of options, which can be good, can be bad. So with Dell's, on the Precision Fixed Workstations area, this is the UK site, and the date is currently the 13th of November 2017. This could go out of date pretty quickly. It might be different based on where you are. I don't know. All I can do is just show you what I've got right now. So Dell have 3 grades of workstations. They've got the 3000, the 5000, and the 7000 series. Each of these workstation types are aimed at different markets. They're aimed at different use cases. So one of the first things you have to do when you're putting together a workstation for a person in a business is to think about what that person's going to be doing, which can be argued with. I get that. Some people might say, well, we don't like buying workstations for a user because that user could move on. And then you're left with this workstation which you bought for one person and he's not there anymore. I'd argue that person could be there for 5 years, and for those 5 years you bought a workstation which isn't really suitable for what he's doing because of the maybe eventuality that he might leave. I don't agree with that. If that's what you do, that's absolutely fine. That's whatever suits you. But I prefer to buy the workstation to suit the person. If that person does move on, reallocate the workstation and buy a new workstation for whoever replaces him, maybe, if that person does a different job. Anyway, deviating off the point there. So these 3 grades here, the 7000 is way too high-end for Inventor. It's way too high-end for most 3D CAD applications. It's for the likes of people that need a workstation with 4 GPUs in, for example. If you're an animator in Disney Pixar or something, you need massive amounts of GPU power. You need a motherboard with 2 Xeons on there. You need hundreds of gigabytes of RAM, so you need loads of RAM slots. It's way overkill for Inventor, so we're not going to go in at this point. This chassis here, you can pick similar components into this one that you can get in these two, but there's just kind of by default a bigger price associated with this one here because it's a bigger chassis. It's just got bigger, higher grade components in there. We've got the 3000 series, which it's perfect for entry-level 3D CAD use, the 3000 workstation. You can put in i7s, you can put in, I think you can put in i5s actually. You can put in GeForce cards, you can put in low-end Xeons. So it's quite good for getting high clock speeds with 4 cores. And for light use, it's impossible to say up to a certain point. Nobody can say you'd buy this up until you start doing this. That just doesn't work. So you've just got to make an educated guess, really, when it comes to what the workstation is going to be used for. So in my case, I know that this new starter is going to be working on huge shop floor layouts. He's going to be putting together factory floor layouts with massive assemblies in arrays, in patterns on a shop floor. And he's going to be working with assemblies possibly going up to 50,000 to 100,000 occurrences, maybe 20,000 unique parts. So something like this would cope with it, but why just cope with it when you can go for something that maybe will have the horsepower in there to be perfect for it? So we're going to go in at the 5000 series for this guy. So with Dell's configurator, you get a couple of options underneath the series. Whenever you see the words new and then the model number, that normally means that Dell have recently introduced a new configurator for that chassis and they've incorporated new components from Intel, from Nvidia, from Samsung, from whoever is providing them with the parts inside the workstation. They've put together a new configuration, and normally it's in a new chassis as well. So the 5810, which doesn't have new, that's probably been around and able to be picked for a couple of years. So it's got older grade components in, which in most cases is still going to be fine, but I prefer to buy cutting edge. So we're going to go new 5820, and we're going to see what we've got in here. So this is where things start to get a little bit hairy, because yeah, the configurator has gone downhill a little bit recently. It used to be a lot more user friendly than it is now. Back in the day, there was a customize and buy button here. You don't get that now. You get build my Dell with a drop down here, so you've got to click that, and you get a mind-boggling array of options. So we're going to start with the processor, which for most 3D CAD applications, especially Inventor, is the most important part of the build, is the processor. So we're going to select more, and you can see here we've got the brand new Xeon W range of CPUs in here, which are the Skylake, I think it's Skylake EP based Xeons. So these Xeons are more expensive than the old, E3s and E5s, but they're running at a higher clock speed. You can see here we've got the W2125. That's annoying, I can't highlight it, but it's got a base clock of 4 GHz and a turbo clock of 4.5 GHz. Now that's the highest frequency a Xeon's ever had. That's really, really good, especially when our 3D CAD application prefers high clock speeds. So what I've got to decide is, I know that I need the highest clock speed because Inventor is going to get the most benefits from that, but do I want to sacrifice a little bit of clock speed for a few more cores? So this 4C, 6C, 8C, it's 4 cores, 6 cores, 8 cores. Do I want to go with a 6-core CPU? So like, for example, the 2135, which still turbos up to 4.5, but its base clock is 300 megahertz less than this one here. Is it worth losing 300 megahertz for an extra 2 cores? It's impossible. It's impossible to make that decision. It really is. Nobody can quantify that in real terms, in terms of performance. So what I would say is, if you're working on large assemblies, I would still go for the 4-core with the higher frequency. That's what I would go for. However, if you know that the guy who's going to be using the workstation might occasionally dip into a bit of rendering work, he might be using other applications that require more cores, then you can take that into account and go with the 6-core or even the 8-core if you want to. But you are sacrificing a bit of clock speed, which you will notice that more. You're going to occasionally get more benefits from having more cores, because again, Inventor and most of Autodesk stuff is single threaded, so you're only going to occasionally get that benefit whilst always losing out on having lesser clock speed. So it's a really hard decision. So I try to go with a compromise, and the compromise in this case is going to be 4 cores with a 4 GHz base clock and a 4.5 GHz turbo clock. I am kind of tempted to go for this one though, and just say, look, yeah, you're losing out on the 300 megahertz, but 3.7 gigahertz is still pretty high. It's still pretty good, and you are going to turbo on 1 core up to 4.5, the same as you do on this one here. But you're going to get them extra 2 cores just in case you do use any of the modules, any other applications that are multi-threaded. So it's a tough call, and it's an extra 300 quid. It's a really hard decision. So in fact, screw it. Yes, I'm going to go for that one there. I'm going to go for that one there, just in case he does. Maybe he's given ANSYS, and ANSYS requires more cores, that kind of thing. So we're going to go for that one there. Okay. Moving down the operating system. This was new to me. I've never heard of this. Like, this is, since when did Windows 10 need a different version when you've got more than 4 cores? I've never heard of that. Windows 10 Pro for Workstation, I don't think I've ever heard of that version as well. I'm sure Dell aren't making it up, but I mean, I've bought Windows 10, I've bought a license myself, and I don't think I was ever consulted as to how many cores my CPU had. So that's a bit odd, but hey, if Dell wants you to pick that and pay an extra 80 quid, you get nickel and dimed everywhere in this place. Alright, no Microsoft Office trials, thank you, don't need any of those. Scrolling down the list. What you'll find as you're picking options in the list is Dell do an okay job of keeping you straight. If you pick something that isn't compatible, they'll tell you. So at the moment we've got a chassis which has got a 425 watt power supply in, but if we pick parts which have a higher rated power draw, then it's going to say, look, you need the bigger power supply, and so you have to go for that one. All right, so video card. There's a massive array of video cards here. You can go for dual cards, or you can go for single cards. And we've got these Matrox. I can't say I've heard of these. I don't know what they are. I don't know if they're like mining cards or something. I don't know. I've never heard of them. I could easily Google it and find out, but I ain't buying those for a 3D CAD user. They're not supported. So we're going to go with Quadro P4000. That is my de facto go-to GPU. It's still overkill for Inventor at P4000, especially for Inventor, which doesn't really use the raw power of the GPU, but the P4000's got 8 gig of video RAM in there, and I think it's got 4 DisplayPort outputs on the back as well. So it's got you covered for monitors, it's got you covered for video RAM. So it's a pretty good card. Right, memory. So this guy's going to be he's going to be working on large assemblies. RAM and CPU are probably the biggest factors for this guy. I don't think he's going to be doing anything which is going to exceed 32 gig of RAM. But just look at the price of RAM at the moment. Going from 32 gig of RAM up to 64, you're going from £466 up to £1,100. That, I mean, how does that even make sense? Surely it's at most going to double, not nearly triple. So I have no idea how. I don't know where those prices have come from, but it's 2666 megahertz, which is a rough. It is an overclock on the DDR4 standard, which is fine. That's fine. It's going to be ECC RAM DDR4, and I'm going to go with 2x16 sticks just in case he does end up exceeding 32 gig of RAM, which I find extremely unlikely. We're using 2 sticks instead of 4, so there's going to be 2 extra slots on the board to upgrade later on. Right, boot drives and hard drives. This is where things get just unnecessarily awkward with Dell. Right, boot drive options. So we've got a SATA, SAS hard drive, solid state drive, no RAID or boot. I mean, internal, external, flex bays, and I mean, who knows what any of this means? I don't know what a flex bay is. What the hell's a flex bay? I don't know. I really don't know. So all I want, and all I would recommend if you're a 3D CAD user that you go for, I mean, if you've got money to burn, fine, go for a RAID array, go for RAID 0 drives, go for, 2 terabyte NVMe PCI. I'm going for something reasonable here for a guy that's just comes into work, boots up his PC, does his work and goes home. That's what I'm speccing for. So we're going for a boot drive that's going to be a PCI Express NVMe drive. So we need to go with, I think, this option here, an internal NVMe PCI Express solid state drive. I don't know what difference that makes to Dell. I don't know if that just instructs them to configure the board in a certain way, or it puts on a different, I mean, it doesn't put on a different hard drive controller. The hard drive controller is here. So I don't know why we have to do this. Surely just by picking that drive, it should just default. I don't know, whatever. And then you've got hard drives down here. So these hard drives are actually this is ridiculous. It's unnecessarily awkward. But these hard drives are the secondary hard drives. So I want a secondary 3.5-inch terabyte data drive. So this is going to be that secondary drive that just sits there that people don't know it's there, but it's a terabyte of just mechanical data space for them to dump files on and whatever. Mainly because the solid state drive boot drive that I put in is normally 512 gigabytes, which it doesn't fill up fast, but it can fill up. So I put this secondary terabyte drive in there just for people to dump stuff on. You can spend an extra £40 and go up to 2 terabytes if you want, but for these guys that work in an engineering office, they're not their personal computers, so they're not putting on games and oodles of photographs in their kids' holidays albums and stuff, so we don't need that. So I'm going to scroll down, so you can see we're putting up like 6 drives in here, which is just unnecessary for what I'm using it for, but the option is there. And we're going to scroll down to the Dell Ultra Speed drives. So these are the PCI Express super fast solid state drives that you want to go for your boot drive. So I'm going to select more. And honestly, I know Dell won't watch this, but Dell, this is absolutely ludicrous. Who even knows what the difference between a what is a quad PCI Express drive? What's a quad drive? Because that doesn't mean there's 4 of them, because it says here there's 2 M.2s. Here's a quad, 1 M.2. So that's 1 quad drive. The other one was 2 quad drives. I don't even know what they are. Where's it gone? Where are you gone? So these could be labeled a lot better. I wish Dell would just say, look, it's a Samsung 960 Pro. There you go. 512, 1 terabyte, 960 Pro. Why do I need to know it's an ultra speed quad or a duo drive? I don't care. Class 40, class 50, what the hell does that mean? I don't know. Someone will know. I don't know. I don't care. So what I'm going to go for is, I want it to be a PCI Express 16 drive, and I want it to be 512 and a class 40, because that tends to be the cheapest one. So we're going to go with, where is it? It's so difficult to find them. It's so difficult to find. I think it's this one here. Ultra speed drive, PCI Express 16, 1 M.2 512 PCI Express NVMe class 40. I mean, Jesus Christ. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. But I think that's the drive I want to go for. And we're at around £3,500 here, which is a lot of money. That is a lot of money for what we're buying. But it is what it is. It is what it is. I think we're compatible so far. There's no warnings appearing, is there? The graphics card requires the 950. Right, so going for that Quadro M4, the P4000 does require the 950 watt chassis, which is an extra £100. Thank you very much, Dell, for that. So we're up to £3,600. It's crazy. I mean, you could skim down a little bit. We could go for the 4-core Xeon instead of the 6-core, shave a couple of £100 off there. We could go for Quadro P2000 instead of the P4000, shave another couple of £100 off there. But this company that I'm buying the workstation for, they're a multinational global engineering company. They're massive. They're not exactly poor. They don't really have any kind of cash issues. So I don't see any need to give people subpar equipment to try and save some money. The last thing people want is a tool that's going to hinder them when they're doing their job. So I'm going to buy something which will do the job, and it won't be a bottleneck. That's the main thing when you're buying a workstation. You just don't want it to be a bottleneck. If the software is going to be a bottleneck, then there's nothing you can do about that. But as long as the hardware isn't a bottleneck, then I've done my job, and then they can do their job. Okay, RAID configurations. I'm not really interested in RAID. The 3D CAD applications don't see many benefits from having anything faster than normal NVMe PCI Express read-write speeds. So putting drives into RAID 0 and doubling the speeds, you're just not going to see that benefit. And people don't copy files around. I mean, we use an Autodesk Vault with this workstation as well. So a lot of the files are going to be pulled off of a Vault server over the network and onto their drive. So read-write speed in most cases is going to be limited by network speed. If it's a gigabit or if it's 100 megabit, I don't know. I don't know what the network speed is, but either way, they're not going to see a benefit from having anything faster than those drives. So RAID 0 is going to be quite pointless for this case. Network card, it comes, and the Dell Precision Workstations come with an integrated network controller, so we don't need to put in an extra network card. Keyboards, cables, this is Energy Star. I mean, this does my head in. It does default to having the Energy Star rating on Dell's, which I think it does. It did on the last one I looked at. This one has got no Energy Star, but I think it's a power plan, a Windows power plan that Dell pre-configure, which gimps the performance of the PC down a little bit to save some power. Have you seen Delhi recently? Have you seen Shanghai and Beijing recently? You can't see the tops of buildings for smog. Me buying a workstation and having a power plan which just limits a few watts of power isn't making any difference to global warming at all. Oh, every little helps. No, nonsense, nonsense. No, not having it. No, I'm not having it. So we're going for no Energy Star. I don't want to be gimping any of the PCs through power plans. Productivity software, no video card cables. Depending on what monitor you've got, you might want to pick a cable that will match your monitor, because it happens all the time. You buy a PC, you get it plugged in, you're using an existing monitor, and you find out that your existing monitor doesn't have DisplayPort. It's got HDMI, and you need an adapter. That's a nuisance, but it's nothing you can. It's nothing you can't fix just by popping out of the shops. £47 for a DisplayPort DVI adapter. Are you having a laugh? 47 quid for an adapter. Turn it in. Get out of here. You know. Right, additional keyboards. I just wouldn't. You do get a Dell Precision keyboard and mouse with these anyway. They're not great, but they do the job. So you can pick a Bluetooth keyboard and a special 3D connection space mouse in here if you want to, but actually that is cheaper. I've just bought one actually. 3D Connection Space Mouse Wireless on 3D Connection's website is more expensive than that. I'm not sure whether this includes VAT or whether that's... Oh, it's excluding VAT, so it might add on. Alright, you might have to do your sums. If you are in the market for one, I would just add VAT onto that and then see what the difference is. So you can choose to include a 3D mouse with your purchase if you want to. Obviously, that doesn't make any difference to the system itself. One thing I did miss out on was the optical drive. Whether or not you want an optical drive in, it's a dying technology at the moment. My PC in my office hasn't had an optical drive in for a long time. I mean, a good 3 or 4 years. And I've, on I think one occasion, thought I really could have done with an optical drive. Having one use in 4 years for me does not warrant buying a case with an ugly optical drive on the front. But in business, it's different. It's different in business. You've got clients sending you drawings on CDs and DVDs. You've got archived DVDs in a storage room which you might need to pull out and read from. So in business, I wouldn't be putting no optical drive into a system. I'd be putting in a slimline burner for £14.70. For the sake of £14.70, put in a slimline DVD burner, and then you're covered. Right, I think that's it. I think that's all the components that we need. So I'll just scan down the list just to make sure there's nothing that I'm missing. But I think that's it. Monitors, you can add a monitor, but I would be inclined to source a monitor from an online e-tailer, like sort of eBuyer or Newegg, wherever you are. You're going to get a better deal on a monitor, and you're going to know what you're buying a lot more than if you would just get one off Dell's website. However, Dell's monitors are really good. They are really good quality. But value, I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the value of them compared to what you can get third party. Optical software, no. Security software, no software. This stuff should be off. I know Dell have sponsorship agreements with McAfee and whatnot, but it's just annoying. It is annoying when you get your new Precision Workstation delivered and it's got like 6 languages of Microsoft Office trial installed, and you've got to run the uninstaller on 6 different languages, and it takes about 15 minutes per uninstaller. That's time I really don't want to have to spend uninstalling bloatware off the systems. But overall, Dell are quite good for not putting bloatware on the Precision Workstations anyway. Right, let's go back up to the top and do a quick recap. So we're at £3,600, which is an awful lot of money. However, this is quite the high-end workstation, really. It could be a lot more high-end, but it's above your average consumer grade system by a mile. So we've got the new Xeon W CPUs in here just for information if you're interested. It is products formerly Skylake. It's on the 14 nanometer die. It has 4 cores, 8 threads, running at a 4 gigahertz base clock. Each core can turbo up to 4.5. Unfortunately, you can't overclock Xeon, so you can't make all the cores run at 4.5. So it'll just pick the best thread and it'll run that one at 4.5, whilst the other ones might fluctuate between 4 and... I don't know. I don't know how these new Xeons behave. I haven't used one yet. 8.25 megabytes of cache. Oh, that's very specific. TDP of 120 watts, that's quite power hungry. But actually, that is quite power hungry for a 4-core CPU. But the Dell Precision Workstations usually come with adequate cooling in them. You don't have to worry about cooling with these because you don't overclock them. Dell will have thermally tested these and stress tested them. So whichever air cooler you're given, it'll do the job. So TDP is just, with a Xeon, it's not something you really need to worry about. We can put in up to 512 gig of RAM. It supports DDR4 up to 2666 megahertz, which is the one we're going for. Max number of memory channels 4, bandwidth, blah 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 blah, yakety schmackety, all good. Right, so that's the CPU that we're going for. I'm still like, I'm on the fence. Shall I drop it down to the 4-core and knock 300 quid? I'm just not 100% convinced that an Inventor user is going to get much benefit from going from 4 cores to 6 cores. But I just don't know what this guy is going to be doing. He is going to be quite a high-end user. He's working on the sales team. So there may be times where he does need to do some photo editing, video editing. Who knows what else. So no, I'm going to stick with the 6-core. We're not running benchmarks on this system. We're not, nobody's going to be comparing it against something else and noticing that 300 megahertz difference really. So we're going to stick with that, right? So we're going for Windows 10 with the strange workstation 4 cores plus version of Windows 10. I mean, I still can't say I've heard of that. All right, no Microsoft Office, Quadro P4000, 32 gig of RAM, 2x16 sticks, which will leave 2 slots free on the board to upgrade later on. We've got the internal NVMe drive, which is going to be one secondary drive, which is a terabyte mechanical drive with a this silly ultra speed PCI Express SSD, which in my experience with Dells, they do normally go with the OEM version of the Samsung drives, which would be like the PM961 or the SM961, or a Toshiba drive they'll put in. They're roughly ballpark the same kind of speeds. The Samsung drives arguably are better in my experience, but if you get a Toshiba drive, the average user isn't going to have any clue. Not a clue. Right, so no RAID, no Energy Star, vPro technology enabled. I don't know what that is. That might just be enabling the virtualization flag in the BIOS, maybe. I don't know. It's not something that the guy's going to use anyway. Right, so no adapters, no extra keyboards, no extra mice. He's just going to get a keyboard and mouse. There's already a monitor on his desk, and that's pretty much it. There you go. That's my thought process for buying a workstation. I'm now going to print this off, send it over to the team leader, and he's going to go and put a purchase order in and buy it. So 3,600 UK pounds. Don't take any notice of this price here, this market price. It is absolute nonsense. This is the market price. They just put this in here to make you feel like you're getting a bargain. Nobody in their right mind should or would ever buy that for that original £5,254. However, just to finish this off, if you are looking to buy an Inventor workstation and you don't have a high-end use case like this guy's going to have, he's going to be working on massive assemblies, don't go for this. This is not suitable for just your average everyday. I like to design products in quadcopters and little machineries and consumer products. This is overkill for that. If you want a workstation for something like that, I can do a completely different video with a completely different spec. This is a very specific niche spec for a specific use case. It's a relatively high-end Inventor user. In fact, I would go as far as to say that bar the RAM, this spec of workstation is probably the highest end I would ever go to, regardless of what the guy's doing. If he's working on oil rigs, he's working on massive vessels, this is probably the system I'd go for. Maybe if he's got 3 monitors and he's working on massive vessels, I might have gone up to a Quadro P5000 or P6000 to get a bit of extra video RAM, not knowing how much video RAM Inventor would consume in that use case. But overall, I think for the highest of the highest end Inventor users, this is a pretty suitable system, which you could go from 32 to 64 gig of RAM for. All right then, that's pretty much it. That's my workstation build complete. It is expensive, I know it's not for everybody, but just thought I'd go through the process. So I'll see you in the next one. Toodles.